Hey, 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 everyone. It is another episode of Beachside Banter with B. Today, I'm here with Dan Clouser, who honestly is like one of my idols, just because he is living the life that I am dreaming about every single day. He lives full time in RV and travels with his wife. And how exciting is that? So, Dan, go ahead, take it away, introduce yourself. Tell everybody why you're living the dream that you're, or the life that you're living. Why you're living my dream? How come? Let's go from there.
No, absolutely. Love the concept of your show,
Thank
and
you.
really looking forward to this conversation. We are actually in a beach town right now. We're in Galveston. You can see
Woo!
I'm a little bit sunburned right now, and that's
Okay.
all. That's all good.
Love it.
But yeah, I mean, why we're living this lifestyle? I mean, it's just a few years ago. If you would have talked to me in 2018, I would have told you I was going to die doing what I was doing at that point. I had
Yep.
no aspirations of living in an RV full time or anything like that. My mom back in the 80s traveled a lot. She took an old 67 Valiant, took the back seat out of it, turned it into a quasi
That's
RV,
awesome.
put a bed in there and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was always inspired by what she did,
Hmm.
but always felt that was her story, not my story. I never, had any aspirations of following her in her footsteps at that point. And I took a couple solo trips in 2019 from Pennsylvania to Dallas, Texas, and then again from Pennsylvania to Orlando, Florida, and just had this kind of aha moment. I really, for the first time in my life, I really took the time to enjoy the journey as opposed to
Yes.
rushing and worrying about getting to the destination.
Hmm.
So I kind of had this aha moment that, I understood finally after all these years. At that point, my mom had been gone for almost 15 years. Um, but I understood why she did what she did and why she took her time and why she enjoyed it. And I was in the process of adding 10 chapters to my first book at that point. And when I got done with those two trips, I'd just written like I hadn't written before and just felt really inspired. And
Oh,
there's just
wow.
such an incredible peace and serenity from the road. It's still
Yeah.
the drive itself is one of the things I enjoy the most. I mean, like
Oh,
I
I wasn't
love being
expecting that.
here. Yeah, I mean, we're here in Galveston, Texas right now, and we're here for an entire month, and I love that. But I really love being on the road and on the move. There's just an incredible serenity about that. So once I started writing like that again, I just kind of felt a calling that it was time to close a chapter and start a new chapter. I resisted it first because I loved doing what I was doing. I was working with
Right.
kids, working in a nonprofit organization that I had founded 30 years prior to that, and
Wow.
really didn't embrace it initially. Um, Once I did, I ran the idea by my wife. She thought I'd lost my mind, but then she was going through some issues at her employment as well, and after a while, after a day of frustration, as things not going the way she wanted them to go, she came home. She says, "Okay, I think this is a sign as well. So I'm in. Let's go ahead and do this." So we put the plan in motion, and this August will be 5 years that we've been traveling full time and loving every second of it.
Okay, so 5 years. So that means you started pre-COVID, right?
The plan was in place pre-COVID.
Okay.
We actually bought our RV the day the governor of Pennsylvania was issuing the shutdown orders for the state. Uh,
Okay.
Simultaneously, we were in the process of taking our house off the market because it had been on the market for about not quite 2 months at that time, and
Hmm.
weren't really getting a whole lot of action on it. And then knowing that there was this looming, unknown in the air,
Right.
we didn't want it to look like a stale listing, so we were talking to our agent about taking it off and you know buying our RV at the same time, which definitely was not part of our plan.
Right.
But it also felt right as we were doing it. Like there's just again a strange
Yeah.
piece that okay, it wasn't the plan to have a mortgage payment and an RV payment and an RV sitting in our yard till who knows when,
Right.
um, but it felt right. So let's keep moving forward. So then when the housing market opened up again in June of 2020, we put the house back in the market. 10 days, we had an offer. It was a good offer for us because it was a kind of an extended settlement date. Or
Oh, even
initially
better.
weren't supposed to settle until August 31st, which
Hmm.
gave us time to get rid of all of our other stuff. We ended up moving
Yeah.
the settlement date up to August 14th because they had two properties to sell, so they ended up selling them both sooner than they anticipated. And we hit the road on August 14th, 2020, and like I said, haven't looked back since.
Yes. Wow. So the only reason why I brought up COVID was because I feel like there was kind of like a wave of people who started to kind of do the same lifestyle
Yeah, there
um,
was.
around that area, and I was definitely one of those people. At that point, my interest was peaked, and I was ready to go. My husband, on the other hand, was like, um, I just don't know. Well, we have five animals too, so two golden retrievers and three cats.
Uh,
So trying to pile all of us into that, into an RV was just crazy. And then at the time, my oldest son was still living with us, and all of that. So things were just like not going to happen.
right.
But I've been slowly trying to convince him that this is the path that we need to go down eventually. So we'll see if it ever happens.
Yeah.
So you guys, when you do your traveling, how do you go about planning it? Is it one of those things where you've got like, the next 6 months lined up, or do you just wake up one day and like, let's move, let's go to Pennsylvania, or let's go to Kentucky?
So that's changed quite a bit since we started. When we
Okay.
first started, it was the latter. It was like literally, all right,
Okay.
where do we want to go today?
Hmm.
We'd go into campground, we'd check in for maybe, 3, 4 nights or something. So we knew where we were leaving. We didn't necessarily know where, or when we were leaving. We didn't necessarily know where we were going once we checked out. Um,
Gotcha. Okay.
and then that changed quite a bit when I became part of this program called National Authors and Grocery Stores.
Oh, okay.
So I do a lot of book signings in
Hmm.
Kroger's and Kroger affiliates. So now
That's
we
awesome.
have much more stringent plan of where we're going to be and when because we kind of schedule our travel around book signings that I'm doing. So, like when we leave here at the end of the month, um, we'll be in Louisiana for a book signing, and then we'll work our way through Tennessee for a bunch of book signings in the Nashville area, Knoxville area, and then the Pigeon Forge area.
Okay.
And then we're doing a retreat in Eastern Tennessee the week third weekend of May, and then we'll actually be in Pennsylvania for the entire summer. Cause we got two granddaughters graduating, and we're
Yay.
doing a little work
Congrats to
camping gig in
them.
Hershey, Pennsylvania this summer. So a
Yeah.
lot more planned out than what it ever was. I mean, last year we went to Alaska,
Ooh.
which was a little bit more of the wing it plan. Like we had an idea. We were with a group. We had an idea of where we would be at certain times. We didn't necessarily know where we'd be staying, whether that would be in a visitor center parking lot or a campground or, along the side of the road somewhere,
Gotcha.
boondocking. So, um, yes, it's changed a little bit over the years. I mean, I really do like the, the wing it method. Um,
I don't know if I
but
could handle it.
but I've got to generate revenue somehow. So booking it around the book signings and speaking engagement stuff like that
Yeah.
makes a lot more sense for us.
That's awesome. So, where would you say your favorite place to camp is so far?
I mean that's so tough. I mean
I know, right?
our favorite camping spot, and it's actually very appropriate for this show. Was just a few weeks ago where we actually camped on the beach in Freeport, Texas before we got into
Oh,
Galveston.
wow.
So they have
Yeah.
this boondocking area where you can camp for free on the beach, and literally, wheels are in the sand. 100 feet from the Gulf. We were there with probably in our immediate area there were about 6 other rigs, from camper vans to Class A RVs and kind of everything in between. And then when we left the next morning, um, we saw a bunch of other, further down the beach, a bunch of other RVs. So that was by far the coolest spot for me. I mean, just being that close to the water, hearing the waves crashing all night long was super, super cool. I mean, we've had like some waterfront camping spots in the past. Like when we were in Seward, Alaska, we were right along Resurrection Bay, which was super cool. We stayed in a place in Maryland once, which is right on the water. But there's just something about being in the sand with the RV and
Yeah.
literally
Absolutely.
that close. Open up the front door in the morning and watch the sunrise.
Oh,
That was super cool. So
yeah.
generally it's tough for me to answer questions like what's your favorite this or what's your favorite that because it's so cool. But my wife and I immediately after that were like, man, this is the coolest camping spot we've had in our travels for sure.
Yeah. This is why we did this.
Yeah,
This right
yeah,
here.
exactly.
That's amazing. Yeah, and to do that in Texas too, because I know the beaches in Texas aren't necessarily the same as what you would find in like Miami, Florida, or places like that. So
Right.
having that, like, I would assume that it would be a little bit more intimate. I mean, you said there was only a couple more rigs, so having the place to yourself, and then I don't know, were you able to like start a like a little bonfire and stuff, or
We
like to
we
cook on?
didn't, but
Oh,
there
okay,
was a guy, again, you can't say spaces because you kind of made your own
right.
space, but 100 yards from us or so that did have a fire that night.
That's
So yeah,
awesome.
you could absolutely do that if you wanted to.
That's like ultimate bucket list things,
Oh
by the
yeah,
way, for me,
yeah,
is to be able to just sleep on the beach, have my little fire, maybe cook a little s'more, all those kind of things. One of these days it's going to happen.
yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. I love that. So how did your friends and family like react whenever you were like, "Hey, you know what? I'm selling my house. I'm getting the hell out of Dodge. We're gonna live in an RV. This is what we're doing." How did
It
they accept that?
it was all across the board. It was like, wow, that's
Really?
really cool, very inspiring. To have you lost your mind? Is this a midlife crisis? What's going on? Is therapy going to be cheaper? That sort of
That
thing.
one's great.
But yeah, it was really across the board. I mean, we got, I tell this story to a lot of people when they ask that question, and we got all of our kids together at the same time. We didn't want to tell one of them, and then
Right.
another one is offended because they weren't the first one to know. So we wanted to tell all of
Right.
them at the same time. And again, it was across the board to, one daughter, saying, "Are you guys crazy?" to another being, "Wow, this is really cool." And then after about an hour, they're walking around the house like picking stuff out. Like, hey, can I get this table when you guys leave? Like what are you going to do with the couch? So they
That's a
adjusted.
big one.
Yeah, they adjusted pretty quickly till it was all said and done. But yeah, it's been all across the board what people's reactions were initially.
Yeah, I bet. I've had the same kind of reactions anytime I'm like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. They're like, no, you're not. Stop it. That's just wishful thinking. No, if it's gonna happen one day, I just know
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's awesome. So, have you ever like ventured into? Well, obviously you've gone through Canada because you've gone to Alaska, but have you ventured down into like South America or Central America or any of that? Mexico?
No, no, we do want to get into Mexico at some point. I just don't know when that'll be yet.
Yeah.
But we have friends that go into Mexico, relatively often. So again, it's one of the things on the list. We just haven't crossed
Yeah.
that one off yet.
Well, it opens up a whole new territory of places to explore too, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Okay, great. So, tell me about your book. I want to know books, as in plural, because there's been multiples.
yeah,
What you got for me?
yeah. So the first one, it's called "The Beauty of a Diamond Through the Eyes of a Coach." It was originally
Okay.
published in 2012. Talks about my coaching career in baseball and softball. It was
Awesome.
republished with 10 new chapters in 2021.
Okay.
Um, and you know that's probably still my baby because it was the first one. Um, the second book is another memoir called The Journey of My Mother's Son, which talks about our
Okay.
RV travels.
Love
Also
it.
a tribute to my mom with doing what she did in the Valiant, and it's
Hmm.
kind of written in a little bit of a journal form. So I have, it talks
Oh,
about the 6 months leading up to us actually selling everything, and the first 18 months that we were on the road. So it's written sort of like a journal. I mean, just the emotions that we were going through once we put the house on the market, once we got closer to it actually being a reality. Because even though you're on board with it, like there's still all kinds of emotions that you're dealing with throughout that time. So,
right.
so each chapter is like almost like a journal entry where it'll show the date that I wrote it and that sort of thing. And then the third book was a children's book that was actually written as though our dog had been the author. We used to travel with a 15-year-old golden retriever.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we lost him back in April of
It's still my heart.
2024.
Anytime you
Yeah.
talk about golden retrievers,
Oh,
and like seriously, my art, because I have two, and they are just like the
they're the best.
once you experience the love of a golden retriever, your life is completely changed.
Yeah,
I
it
know that's
is.
crazy. I'm literally like tearing up about it, but man, I could not imagine. Yeah.
We,
Anyways, go
I
ahead.
mean, even this morning, we went for a bike ride on the beach this morning, and my wife got up ahead of me a little bit because I ran out to throw my feet into the Gulf for a few minutes, and I saw there was a couple walking up with a golden retriever, and I'm saying to
Oh,
myself,
yeah.
she's stopping to pet that dog. I guarantee she's stopping to pet that dog.
You
And
have to.
sure enough, she did, and yeah, we stood there for probably 10 minutes petting the dog and talking to her owners and stuff, and
Yes. I love
it
that. I
was
get it.
super. Yeah, I mean, it's anytime we see a golden, like we literally go out of our way. Like people probably think,
Yes.
because I mean, we'll go like across the street, 500 yards if we spot a golden in the distance, like, hey, can we
Anybody
pet
want to
your
kidnap
dog?
me?
Yeah,
Right? That's all
yeah.
they need to
So
do is bring a golden retriever and they could get me
yeah,
in any van they
yeah.
want.
So the children's book, again, it was written as though Youkilis was
That's
our dog's
cute.
name. He was named after the Red Sox old third baseman Kevin Youkilis. So it was
Yes.
his perspective of living what he called the house on wheels. And
Oh my
then
gosh.
I published a coloring book that was just a follow up to the children's book. A lot of the same illustrations that are in the children's book, but just somebody can color it in, whether you're adult color or kid color or
Oh my gosh, I
whatever.
love it.
So those are
Yeah.
the four books, and each one of them, has their own story. I was once told by a publisher that I'm all over the place. I have no niche. I need to dial in more.
I hear that all the time too.
Actually told that I shouldn't, that publishing the children's book would be the worst idea that I ever had because it was completely out of my niche. And by
Oh,
far, that book is my best-selling book by far. I mean, probably
I
3 to
bet.
1 over the next best-selling book.
Yeah. Not that the other stuff isn't interesting at all, but I mean, you're the voice of a golden retriever, so
Yeah,
of course
absolutely.
that's definitely going to be a top seller.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's awesome. So,
So
what made you decide that you wanted to start writing books? Was it just because you had gone through all this stuff and you're like, all these people are asking me these questions, so I'll just throw it on paper? Or
I've loved writing my entire life.
oh,
From the
okay,
time I was a young boy, I just enjoyed writing, the creative process. I my first dabble into like letting other people read my writing was my brother is 9 years older than me, so
hmm
we were living in Florida at the time. He had just gotten out of the service and he started playing on an adult soccer team down there in Florida. So I started writing a weekly newsletter for his soccer team called the Melbourne United Post, just handwritten on
oh,
notebook
okay.
paper. And I'd
Oh,
write
that's fun.
highlights of the previous game and, preview of the upcoming game and all that sort of stuff. And I just really enjoyed the whole process. And I really enjoyed people, you know, the wives and girlfriends of the players, passing around, my little newsletter before a
Yes.
game or after the game. My mom worked for an insurance company at the time, so she'd make extra copies that we could pass around on game day, and I just always loved it. I mean, through high school, I still remember writing an essay for English, which I specifically remember my English teacher is telling me that it was probably the best piece of satire he's ever read in his life. Um, and again, just stuff like that sticks with me, and I just always loved the
Yeah.
process. But even like in high school and stuff, I'd never really like had aspirations to become a published author. I mean, that didn't come
Right.
till later in life. Where I just again I wrote newsletters for our organization and stuff like that, and wrote articles for our annual program. And at one point, like I was like, you know what, I think I'm gonna write a book. Had no idea how the process worked, but I started writing, and then I met a another guy by the name of Jeff Potter who had recently published a book,
Mhm.
and he kind of set me off into the world of self-publishing or hybrid publishing at that time in 2012, and you know he I hadn't told anyone that I was writing this book other than my wife, and he told me, well, that's your first mistake. You want to tell everybody you're writing a book because they will kind of keep you on task. you know, and
Okay, I can see that.
the
Yeah.
fear of failure comes in where it's like when someone
Yep.
asks you, "Hey, how's the book coming along?" and you're like, "Oh, I haven't touched it in, 6 months." Kind of keeps your toes to the fire. So I took his advice, and that's what I did. I started telling, everybody I ran into I was writing a book, and it did help. It absolutely did help. It kind of kept me on
Yeah.
task. It's like, man, I've told all these people I got to actually finish this thing and get it published.
Right.
So
No,
um,
I totally get that. Isn't it? It's
yeah,
crazy how like you kind of get led down this path in life, So you may not exactly expect to do all these things, but then it just all kind of like flows in the same like it's the same way with life, love, and travel. So it was one of those things like I didn't really ever have anything to desire to travel, and then I saw the beach for the very first time, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to do with my life. I don't know how. I'm gonna figure it out. And then it was like, I don't really want to tell people because, I've started businesses before. I had like this little tie-dye business that didn't do very well. And, a bunch of other things. I've sold like nail stickers and, Scentsy and all that stuff. And I'm like, I've already kind of tapped out all of my audience. So I don't want them to think, oh, well, great. Here's another thing that she's doing. We got to support her and blah, blah, blah. So I didn't tell anybody. I started it. I actually just announced it on my personal Facebook page about 3 months ago or so. And it's been 2.5 years. And everybody's like, oh my God, I had no idea you were doing this. So then
yeah,
it's like, why wasn't I telling everybody? But it's exactly what you said, though. It's that fear of failure. If
yep,
I go out and I fail with the people I have no idea, like they've never met me, then who cares? But if I'm failing in front of all these people that I, love and all this, and it's like, can't do that. So
yeah,
yeah, I could see how telling people kind of holds you to it a little bit more and
yeah,
definitely gives you a little bit of motivation to keep going. So
yep. No
are
doubt about
you
that.
planning on writing anything else? You got anything else in the queue?
Actually, working on a fifth book right now. And
Awesome.
actually, it is another dog theme. So it's actually Youkilis left me a little bit of a manuscript when he left. It's not going to be a children's book, but
Okay. Ooh,
it'll be
it's gonna be
co-authored
a
between
dog
him and
book.
I.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, I love it.
so yeah, so hopefully that's done by the middle of this year. Just
Yeah.
kind of putting a lot of finishing touches on it, and again, it's an emotional book to deal with, as
Yeah.
you
I
well
get
know,
that.
being a golden
Definitely.
mom.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it'll be a good book when it's done.
Yeah. Can I be honest with you? I
Yeah,
think you did find your niche. I think that you and writing from his perspective, the two of you together, that's a bomb idea. I love it. I really, really think that's gonna go because if not a lot of people do that and they don't have that kind of thought. So, maybe more like a teen adult book.
yeah, yeah,
Throw them in there, little swears every now and then. Oh yeah, you got it. You're gonna be world famous here in a bit.
yeah. He
I
he
just
did
know it.
he did blog when he was still around. He had a blog as
Oh my
well, and
gosh,
I did notice that he always got more hits on his blog than I did on mine.
isn't that crazy? Like I tell my husband that all the time. I'm like, we could throw the kids out there. The kids is what I call them, the girls and all that. Throw them out there. I bet they would make way more money on social media than I ever could. And he's like, yeah, you're probably right. I'm like, they're a lot cuter, that's for sure. But
No doubt.
whatever. Okay, so one of the questions that I've always wondered is like, what's the biggest misconception for somebody who is traveling full time in an RV? Because I know a lot of people think that it's difficult or it's stinky or whatever it is, but what do you think the most common misconception is?
Um, I mean, I think the biggest one is just that, you need to have, some massive trust fund that you're
Okay.
drawing fund from.
Yeah.
I mean, we we're far from wealthy. You know, still
Right.
still doing book signings, still writing books, and generating revenue however I can. So I
Right.
think that's probably the biggest misconception. And for us, I mean, we never RV'd prior to full timing. So we weren't like
Okay.
weekends and campgrounds our entire lives or anything like that. I mean, we both tent camped when we were kids with
Right.
youth groups or family or whatever the case
Everybody
was.
has. Yeah.
I think I stayed in an RV one time when we were in Key West, or actually, I'm sorry, Key Largo, with my uncle one time, and that was it. So I think there's a lot of ways to learn as you go.
Okay.
YouTube is a great resource to kind of troubleshoot things that might go haywire. Um, and one thing we've learned is the RV community is such an incredibly giving and just salt to the earth type community
I've
that
heard
if
that.
you
Yeah.
are, if you got an issue, in a campground and you're, somebody sees you working on something, a half a dozen people are going to stop by and say, "Hey, you need help with anything?" I
Right.
mean,
I
just
love that.
just today, our neighbors here were doing something to their rig, and I was out, doing some different stuff, and um, there were probably three people that walked by and like, "Hey, you guys need help with anything?" And they were like,
Oh, I
"No,
love
we're
that.
good, we got it on." So there's always people that are willing to help out. It's really an incredible community.
That's awesome. I have heard that from a few different people that like once you're in and you have just a couple of the lingo words or whatever, right? Then they're like, oh, yep, he's a full timer. We're buddies or whatever. Just
Yep.
kind of like that the Jeep people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like y'all have your own community. I love that. If you were trying to give advice to somebody who's a brand new RVer, what kind of rig would you suggest they start with?
Oh, I mean that's so subjective to really what they want,
Okay.
and obviously affordability as well. I mean, we're in a 33-foot Class C.
Okay.
Um, we we got this because again we never RV'd, so we didn't want some huge piece of machinery that we were
Right.
dealing with. It was really we only really looked at two RVs. This one which is a Forest River Sunseeker, and then we looked
Okay.
at another Sunseeker that was I think 24 feet maybe, 26 feet, something like that. And
Okay.
there's just kind of night and day between the amount of space that they offered. Um,
Gotcha.
so this was like the perfect fit for us. But we've talked to people who, um, yeah, I don't even know what you call it. We were sitting around the campfire last night with some guys, and they're in this. I mean, it's not. I don't even know if it qualifies as a travel trailer, but it's like this tiny little. I mean, for lack of a better term, like a tow behind tent almost. But like
Oh, I think I've seen those.
but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's now they're not full timers, but that's like their thing.
Yeah.
We got some other friends who are in some big class A, tandem axle, 43 foot, 45-foot rigs.
My
And
goodness.
that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
You know, we have some friends in some fifth wheels where they just wanted, something that was, when it was in a campground, they wanted to be spacious. They wanted to, not feel cramped if somebody came over to hang out inside the RV with them for a while,
Right.
and that sort of thing. I mean, we wanted something that we don't tow a vehicle, so we wanted something that we could get in and out of a
Gotcha.
grocery store, a Walmart,
Right.
or a CVS without any major issues. So
Yeah.
that's why we chose this, and again, we didn't want something that was overpowering, and at the time, the Class C just seemed like it was a little bit more driver friendly as opposed to
Gotcha.
a Class A. So
Yep.
it really is subjective. So I would just say, check out some floor plans. I did a lot of stuff, floor plan wise online before we ever showed up
Mhm.
at a dealership. So when we showed up at the dealership, like we knew, the model we wanted to look at, so it kind of eliminated some of that. I mean, 'cause look, at the end of the day, they're looking to sell you something, so
Whatever's the most
they're,
expensive.
yeah, yeah, so they're going to have their own opinions. So I kind of
Right.
tried to educate myself as much as I could. Ours is actually a 2019 leftover, so we got a really, really
Okay.
good deal on it with getting it in March of 2020, which is another thing that kind of drove our decision. A lot of people tell you, don't buy something new. Ours was new. We've had very few issues with it.
Oh, good.
So again, I think a
Yeah.
lot of that's just luck of the draw. I wouldn't buy a whole lot of stuff that was manufactured between like 2021 and 2022 because there
They're
was
just
some
popping it out left and right at
yeah,
that point,
yeah,
I
there
feel
was some
like.
faulty
Yeah.
workmanship going on there. We were at the Tampa RV show a couple years ago, and stuff that's at an RV show should be like the cream of the cream. Um,
Right.
and like you could just walk through and see, you know, glaring,
Oh,
just bad workmanship. So I'd avoid
yeah.
anything. I mean, they were pinched for staff. You had the supply chain issues. Um, and all kinds of other stuff. So that would be my only
Yeah.
advice: is don't buy anything that was manufactured, between 2021 and 23 at that point. But by now I think everything's kind of worked through. Um, so I think you're
Yeah.
good if you get something new at this point. But um, again, that's a tough question to answer because it's so subjective. What you're actually looking for. I mean, we saw when we were camping on the beach the other week, a woman traveling solo in a Class B camper van that was
Mhm.
24 foot, I think,
Oh,
um,
wow.
and it was like super nice. And she said, again, for her, it was kind of the perfect setup. Her husband had just passed away about a year ago,
Mhm.
so they had Class A's and travel trailers and fifth wheels, and she's like, I didn't want to be pulling a fifth wheel around, so this was kind of perfect for me to to scoot out and get away. So
Yeah.
just look at a bunch of different different models and see what you like the best.
Okay, yeah. So I know that's one of the things that like we have gone back and forth. Like I've gotten my husband to at least entertain the idea of floor plans. So we're getting there. I'm telling you, one step at a time.
Baby steps.
But that's like one of the things we can't really figure out. Like, do you just go full force and get a Class A, or do you get a truck and a whatever the fifth wheel, or do do you and then pull something? And there's just so many different options that
There are.
it's honestly overwhelming. So I kind of wish somebody would just like start being like here's an idea for you, Dan, an RV consultant. And you could just like make all my decisions for me and tell me what it is that I should buy and how to do it. Um, yeah, teach me how to use it too. That's my biggest fear. That I'm gonna get like to a campground and I'm gonna be like, how do I turn on the water? What do you mean I gotta hook it up?
Yeah.
How do I do that? And so like back to what you had said earlier, a lot of people there in the campgrounds are super helpful and all of that. So that actually makes me feel a little bit better because at least I know that when I have no idea what I'm doing, somebody might.
Yeah. And they will. They'll help you out. I mean, 'cause that is, we bought ours from a small town dealership in
Mhm.
Pennsylvania, not far from where we lived. And one of the complaints we hear from other people who are new to RVing is that they don't show you a whole lot of how things
Right.
work. We were fortunate, and again, maybe again, it was part of the, just the timing of it, the fact that,
Right.
this was probably their last day in business for what they didn't know till when. But like we spent probably 2.5 hours just going through,
Oh,
all the
that's
little
nice.
intricacies. And there was still stuff that was missed because there's
Right.
so much. But like we've heard, like my cousin just bought a little travel trailer and she said like their, you know, walk through, whatever they call it, was like an hour. And I'm like, oh
Oh
yeah, you
gosh.
can't cover hardly
No way.
anything in an hour.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, try to get them to give you as much time as they can on that. But like when we first bought this, we did think that this was going to be like our starter RV and that we would upgrade to a
Mhm.
Class A down the road. Um, but we did a little renovation about 2 years ago now,
Mhm.
where we took our dinette out and
Oh, okay.
place like what I'm sitting at now. You can kind of see our walls behind us, so I'm
Mhm.
facing the outside of the wall. So we put like a little bar in there and some regular
Oh,
moving chairs, and took the
yeah.
one bunk out because it it sleeps two for the most part. I mean that's
Right.
what our goal really is. We'll have some grandkids or a niece every once in a while stay with us, and they use the top bunk. But
Mhm.
we didn't need the extra bunk, so we have that for storage space and build a little kind of closet thing in there as well. So since we've done our renovation, like we're like, you know what, this is actually perfect for us at this point.
Yeah.
We're not really
You made it
looking to,
yours.
yeah, we're not really looking to upgrade or do anything like that now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. And that's one of the things too. I feel like a lot of people are doing is they're taking like maybe like the super base model and then turning it into like this super fancy. Like some of the places are fancier than the department that I'm in now. The
Yeah.
condo, so it's crazy.
That's what I love
So
about people
okay.
seeing people who actually do their own build out of a camper van or a schoolie
Right.
or something. Like they get very, very creative with those build outs
Yeah,
as well.
it's
But you
awesome.
also
I've
have to
seen some
be
of them.
handy to do that, which I am
Yeah,
not.
yeah, that's the key.
Yeah.
I used to consider myself handy, and I have learned that I am not. That is a for sure thing now. So when you're out and about and you're meeting all these people, like, has there been anybody that stands out that is like maybe one of the funniest stories you might have?
So the there's definitely one guy that comes to mind as like probably the most interesting dude we ever met, and he
Hmm.
was in Glen Allen, Alaska last year.
Okay.
We had stopped at a rest area, noticed that our one tire was low on air. Luckily, there were two guys in the rest area that had a compressor that were
Oh,
able to
okay.
get air in our tire, which got us down to Glen Allen. And this was the Saturday after July 4th. So my wife goes into the visitor center, asks if, is there a tire repair shop in town that we can get to? And, we're pushing 5 o'clock. And, the lady in the visitor center is like, well, yeah, but you're not going to get into anywhere until Monday. And we were supposed to be
Right.
on a boat in Valdez on
Oh
Monday.
no.
So we're just thinking, man, this is going to be a major headache. And then she says, but I do know a guy who might be able to help you out. And
Hmm.
initially, I'm thinking this is a guy who owns a repair shop, who is willing to come in after hours and get us hooked up. But it was literally just a guy
Oh no.
who had equipment to work on tires and works on her tires for her when she needs it. And so she gets him on the phone. His name's Matt, and we draws out like on the back of a. I mean, it wasn't a napkin, but it might as well have been a napkin. Directions to his house because she didn't know
Oh
the
no.
address.
I've seen
Um,
horror movies start this way.
yeah, yeah,
Come on, Dan.
yeah. So I'm like, well, you better give me his phone number because with these directions, like, there's probably a real good chance we're not finding them on go one. And she's like, well, I'll
Mhm.
give you his number, but there's probably not going to be service around his house. I'm like, all right, excellent.
Okay.
It is what it is. So we start our little trek with our napkin in hand, and the one landmark she gave us was the fire company. So we found that and made the first left that we needed to make. And at that point, we're on gravel roads
Oh
and
no.
just kind of, she called it a different development than what I'm used to. Alaskan developments are quite different than developments anywhere else. So we're kind of moseying back these, stone roads, and we get to a spot that, according to our map, looks like it might be the spot. So I give him a call. I'm like, hey, Matt, this is Dan. We just talked. I think I'm at your house, but I'm not sure. And
Hmm.
his first response, instead of like, let me look out the window or something, would be what I would think,
Right.
was like, what do you see? And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I see two ATVs, an old pickup truck, and an old Firebird. And he's like, what color are the ATVs? I'm like, one's yellow and one's red. He's like, oh yeah, you're at the right spot. He goes, do you
Yeah.
see the? He's like, do you see the garage? I'm like, yeah, I can see the garage. He's like, start backing up to the garage, and I'll come
Oh
out and
my
get
god.
you. And we start backing up, and he comes out. And if there was a Welcome to Alaska billboard, like, this guy should have been on it. So he's a redhead with a big old beard. He's got a pipe in one hand and a Heineken in the other,
Oh my
and
goodness.
he's guiding me back. And he's like, all right, that's good. And I get out, and he's playing. He's got music playing relatively loud in the background, and I forget exactly what song was playing anymore. Might have been a Leonard Skinner song or something like that. And
Sounds about
I
right.
was like, man, I like your music. And he's like, oh yeah, it just plays whatever it wants to play. And then we just, he gets right to work, man. Starts getting our tire off, and we just start having a conversation. And this guy had been an ice road trucker.
Okay.
He
Oh well,
was,
that builds character right there.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
divorced. He was telling me about, raising his kids, and how they played a little bit of baseball, and um, he was just really fascinating. And he started telling me about his wood stove.
Oh,
That he had just built this wood stove, and
that's
he
awesome.
has pipes going into the garage to keep everything warm when it's 40 below up there. And
Oh my
um,
gosh.
we ended up having like three tiny little sheet metal screws in our tire, and he's like, well, that's a record. I've never seen three screws in one tire. So he got us all patched up, and then before we left, he's insisting. He's like, well, come on in. Let me show you this wood stove. You're really going to be impressed. And so I'm like, sure enough, man. So I go walking in, and it was, I mean, the wood stove was probably as big as the bedroom in our RV. I mean, like it was massive. And
Wow. Well,
he's
Alaska's
like,
cold, man.
yeah. And his wood shed, it had good size logs in it that weren't split. And he's like, yeah, I just throw those things in there and it burns like paper mache. He's like, I don't
Wow.
have time to be cutting, and splitting wood. They got to go in full. And he was just fascinating. I mean, telling me the roads about the
Yeah.
ice road, the stories about the ice road truckers, how he hates the show. He's like, the show's all BS. He's like, that's not really
Yeah.
how it happens. He goes, I don't know if people don't realize that there had to be a camera crew that had to clear the roads before they started filming. He goes, but that's not how
That's
any of
true.
this works. Um, and till it was all said and done, I showed him the map. I'm like, well, here's the map that the lady at the visitor center gave us to get here. Because I was telling him like I have no idea how we got here. He looked at the map. He's like, says, I don't know how the hell you got here either. He goes, but you did. And
That's awesome.
yeah, and he just such a cool guy. And then he said to me, he says, oh, if you need anything else, you got my number. Just give me a
Yeah.
call.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
all
I
right,
do.
man, no
Wow.
problem. But he was just absolutely fascinating. And I mean, I really, it's like
That's
the
awesome.
best of a worst situation. Like that situation could have went sideways,
Oh,
in so
absolutely.
many other ways.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was the guy who ended up helping us out, and was super funny and nice and helpful. And at the end, wanted to charge me $10, and I'm like, at least let me give you 20
Dude.
bucks, man. Like, here's 20
Right.
bucks
Let
at
me give you
least.
some more money.
Yeah.
Come
Um,
on now.
but
$10 isn't even
super,
enough to
yeah,
buy lunch anymore
yeah, yeah.
or a
So just
coffee.
super, super nice guy, super nice guy.
Yeah.
So he was probably the
That's
most
awesome.
interesting just because, like I said, the ice road trucker stories and stuff, I was fascinated listening to him, and just everything else. You know,
Yeah.
just he was a fun guy to be around.
There's a lot of really, really cool people that come out of Alaska. So my son is actually stationed up there right now. He's in the army, and there's every weekend we talk, and the conversations that we have and the stories that he tells me is just like
Yeah,
totally mind-boggling. And he's like, "Oh yeah, we went camping, we were out, and sleeping in our little sleeping tent, and blah blah blah." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's negative 50 degrees there.
yeah,
What are you doing?" He's
yeah.
like, "I don't know, it's no big deal."
The
I'm like,
Alaskan
that's
people are
crazy.
so cool, whether they were,
They really are.
transplants or whether they were born there, whether they're actually,
Yeah.
natives. Um, so cool. And I'd tell people, I was like, I did 3 book signings in Alaska, and
Hmm.
so I got to interact with a lot of people. And I said it was the same story. Like every time you met someone who lived in Alaska, it was the same story. It's like, oh yeah, we came up here for 2 weeks back in
Yep.
'87 and
Fell in
never
love.
left. Or
Yeah.
2014. It's like just fill in the year, whatever the year was. Like just fill it in. Like we came up
Right.
here and boom. We met a lady in Skagway who ran a fudge shop who was actually from
Oh.
Mississippi.
Oh. That is
Um,
good.
so she was telling us about, they had to go up and get the fudge shop opened up in March for the season. So like they're driving up the Alcan when there's still, you know, several feet of snow on the
Right.
ground at that point, pulling a trailer and kind of all their stuff, and you know, they work the season, and then they drive back to Mississippi for the winter.
Yeah.
So yeah, just fascinating stories like that. And there've been so many just fascinating people that we've met
Yeah.
on
I
on the
bet.
way, that just sitting around the campfire. I mean, another guy in Toke that we were talking to, who him and his buddy were riding their motorcycles across Alaska. They came up from they started in Vegas, and drove all the way up the Alcan on their motorcycles. And it's just fascinating to listen to him as well. So many cool people we've met. I mean, it's such a
Yeah.
blessing to meet all the people we met.
That's awesome. See, I told you you were literally living my dream life right now. You get to meet all these really cool people. You have all these awesome stories to tell. And you get to hang out on the beach whenever you want to. You're
Yeah.
writing awesome books that sound with your dog. Oh my gosh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
Dan, this has been a really awesome conversation. I've really enjoyed this. So normally before everybody leaves the show, I make sure that everybody knows where they can find you. So go ahead, plug your socials, your website, all that stuff.
Absolutely. The best spot to find me is just on my website, which is journeymymotherson.com or danclouser.com. They both go to the same site, but links to my podcast, my social media account. If you want to book me as a speaker, see where my book tour is, if we're coming to a town near you. All that stuff's on my website. So that's definitely the best spot to go. And then again, from there, you can go to all the social media sites and find all the information out that you want to about me.
Fantastic. So let me know too if you're ever in Atlanta, because we should all meet up and maybe have dinner or something one night. It'd be fun to pick your brain a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Real quick, the last question that I ask everybody before we end the show: what does paradise mean to you?
Freedom.
Freedom.
Just
okay.
The freedom to go where you want to go. Be where you want to be. I mean, paradise some days can be on the beach, some days it can be in the mountains. Last summer it was in Alaska. This month it's in Galveston, Texas. I think freedom is really, the freedom to find your paradise wherever it is, I think is paradise.
Perfect. Yes, I love that answer. That is a perfect answer. So awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. We will talk soon. And I will see you. Have a good one.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Bye. Hey there, beach lovers. That's it for today's episode of Beachside Banter with B. I sure hope you had as much fun as I did. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoyed the show. You can catch me on all social media platforms at Life, Love, and Travel. And if you've got a question or you just want to stop by and say hi, feel free to slide into my DMs and I'll make sure to get those answered for you. Big thanks to everyone who joined me today and for all of you who tuned in. And until next time, enjoy your week.